Welcome into week 7 of the AFC East Summit in the NFL season. My name is Brett McDurphy. I am the host tonight of the AFC East Summit. Our other host, unfortunately, did not want to go live with us because they ended up losing this week. So the winner of this week, the Buffalo Bills, in representation of the Buffalo Bills, is going to handle all duties related to the AFC East Summit this week. We're going to talk about the New York Jets, the Buffalo Bills, the Miami Dolphins, and the New England Patriots. But before we begin, we have to do something important and hit our intro. Welcome in, everyone, and welcome back to another edition of the AFC East Summit for Week 7 of the 2024 NFL season. My name is Brett McDurphy, and I'm glad to be back on the Nickel City Mafia, where our family business is football. Unfortunately, over the last few weeks, I have not been able to be on the channel due to the hurricanes that have hit Southwest Florida. But I am back, and I am better than ever. We had two hell of a hurricanes that hit us, and we are stronger and better than ever after it. Fortunately, we did have some damage to our house, as well as some of my friends having damage to their places. But we can always repair damage. We can't repair bodies, and that's the biggest thing that I say about it. Luckily, we are safe and healthy. That's the biggest thing that matters. Got our power back on. Unfortunately, last week we did not have power, and we had a couple of other issues that arise throughout the week, but we are back and better than ever, like I mentioned, and we're here to talk about some of the storylines. There's some dramatic games and significant storylines that unfolded across the division. So let's dive into it, and let's start off with the Buffalo Bills, the team that won last week of the four teams. Let's start with those Bills, and who are now comfortably at 5-2. Buffalo hosted the struggling Tennessee Titans and delivered a dominant 34-10 victory. Quarterback Josh Allen had a stellar performance, throwing for 323 yards and 2 touchdowns, showing once again why he's considered one of the elite quarterbacks in the NFL. Wide receiver Keon Coleman had a breakout game, hauling in 125 yards. Buffalo's offense kicked it into high gear in the second half after struggling in the first half, scoring 17 points in the fourth quarter alone. Buffalo's defense also played a key role in the victory, holding the Titans to just 10 points and forcing some critical turnovers that shifted momentum. It's a crucial win for the Buffalo Bills as they extend their lead in the AFC East. The Bills looked very bad in the first half. I'm not going to lie to you guys. I'll be very honest with you. As I see some of the comments coming into the chat, I will get to those in just a minute. But it looked very bad for me in the first half of the game. The Bills going down 10-0 early on. And to be honest with you, the Tennessee Titans had their number left and right. They were getting the ball down the field. They were able to do things on defense to stop Josh Allen. I remember at the beginning of the game, it was 5 straight punts that the Bills had, and it looked pretty bad. Amari Cooper having the drop on one of the drives that hurt the momentum for the Buffalo Bills. But in the second half and after the going down 10-0, something changed in the game. Buffalo's defense played more free, and I felt like they played very well in the game. It was one of the better matchups of the week of games to watch, in my opinion. And I knew that it was going to be a tough game based off of how the Tennessee Titans defense has played so far this year. But the Bills came out in the second half, and the halftime adjustments the Bills have made over the last few weeks have been important. And you've seen it time and time again, how we start to gain momentum in the second half. We don't start off strong. And that's one of the things that I would like to see the Bills work on in the next couple of games, is starting off strong, because we start off the game so sluggish, and then we turn it around in the second half and we play very well. This is one of those games coming up this week for the Buffalo Bills against the Seattle Seahawks, where they're going to have to do that. And I want to see them have more success in the first half of the game. I do see your comments coming in. Beth B coming into the chat. Hey, guys, appreciate you for tuning in, as well as Alan Podger coming into the chat. Appreciate you, Alan, coming in here, saying all these superstars on the Jets don't mean crap. Absolutely. Red, White, and Bills coming into the chat saying Jets were supposed to be 13-4. I'm so confused. Completely agree with you on that as well. Let's turn it over to the second place team in the division, and we'll talk about the Miami Dolphins. It's been a tough season for the Dolphins, and week 7 didn't make it any easier. The Dolphins fell to the Indianapolis Colts 16-10 in a game that was highlighted by some of their offensive struggles. Running back Devon Chan put in a decent effort with 77 rushing yards, but the passing game couldn't find much rhythm as their quarterback struggled making big plays down the field. Tight end Jonnu Smith had a solid outing with 96 receiving yards and a touchdown, but it wasn't enough to overcome the Colts' late game surge. With the loss, the Dolphins dropped to 2-4 on the season, and their hopes of making the playoffs are fading fast unless they can turn it around and things get better quickly. The Dolphins right now, they are struggling. You saw in the game Tyler Huntley go down with an injury and Tim Boyle come back into the game. It was not the best game, and I know my friend Keith would agree with us when we say that it was one of the ugliest games that I've seen. And you saw Anthony Richardson towards the end of the game. He started to gain a little bit of momentum, and he was able to lead drives down the field in order to put points on the board for the Indianapolis Colts. And when I look at this game, like I said, it would have been different if Tua was in the game. Unfortunately, he wasn't, and I do believe that the Dolphins would have won that game if Tua was in there. But unfortunately, he wasn't, and the Indianapolis Colts capitalized on that. Beth B coming into the chat saying the Bills are hanging with Mr. Cooper now. 90s throwback. Absolutely love that 90s throwback. Great one there. Great comment. I love it. Let's turn it over to the third place team in the division. We'll talk about the New York Jets. And I know my friend Anthony is going to be upset with me when I talk about these New York Jets, as he had high expectations on the season and it's not working out in their favor. The Jets did not take care of the field this week. They had a bye, they did not take the field this week. They had a bye coming off of a tough start of the season. The Jets have a record of 2-5. The Jets used this week to regroup and focus on some of their offensive and defensive issues. That's not true, guys. Actually, I do apologize. I have the wrong notes here for the New York Jets. The Jets did play this week, and they played against guess who? Who did they play against? They played against the Pittsburgh Steelers on Sunday Night Football. I knew my notes were wrong because I remembered that game. I was watching the game, actually. So I apologize. Sometimes notes don't always work in your favor as you're trying to watch that. But that was one of the worst performances for the New York Jets, only putting up 15 points in a 37-15 loss. Russell Wilson looked like one of the more premier quarterbacks going back to his days in Seattle, having a great game there, finishing up 16 of 29 for 264 yards, 2 touchdowns. Najee Harris also having a big game there for 21 carries for 102 yards, 1 touchdown. And then George Pickens leading the way for the receiving yards with 5 catches for 111 yards and 1 touchdown. It was kind of a slow start to the game for both teams. Breece Hall had a touchdown in the first quarter of the game. It was a 7-3 at the end of the first quarter, with Chris Boswell making a 46-yard field goal in the game. And then in the second half, points started to come alive for both teams. That's when Chris Boswell started it off with a 29-yard field goal, making it 7-6. Then Tyler Conklin had his 1-yard reception from Aaron Rodgers. Garrett Wilson had the 2-point conversion for the Jets, making it a 15-6 game. And that's when the Steelers took advantage of scoring 31 unanswered points, and they started rolling around. George Pickens having an 11-yard touchdown pass from Russell Wilson, and then Chris Boswell making another field goal, as well as Russell Wilson having a 1-yard touchdown run, Van Jefferson scoring, as well as Najee Harris scoring. It's one of those games where I look at the numbers in the game, and let's talk about the numbers here. And I know that Anthony would say the same thing. Total yards given up in the game, 409 for the Jets. Where was their defense in the game? That's one of the things that you have to remember. This was supposed to be one of the most elite defenses, and they haven't shown up at times, and they've given up a lot of rushing yards lately, and that's one of the things that they are struggling with. 6.2 yards per play. That's one area that I think that Anthony would agree with me when I say that they need to clean that up in the game. Also, fourth down efficiency, 2 of 2 for the Pittsburgh Steelers. That's another area that they need to correct a little bit more. In the time of possession battle, it was almost halfway there, 32 minutes for the Steelers, 28 minutes for the Jets. But look at the difference from last week to this week for the New York Jets, and I'll give you some positives as well. The penalty yardage. Last week it was 11 penalties in the game. This week, 5 penalties for 50 yards, so they cut it in half in the game. Some good numbers there, but the Jets will play this week against the Patriots on Sunday at 1 p.m., so that's one of the games that we will get to talk about later on in the show. Let me turn it over to the chat real quick. I do see Alan Podger coming in. I do appreciate you, Alan, for mentioning that I'm doing an excellent job. Really appreciate you there. Messed up a little bit, but we always have the hiccups sometimes when we go live, and that's what matters is we always correct it. And I do apologize for not having the right notes there. Beth B coming into the chat saying, thank you. I get a good one now and then. I appreciate you for tuning in. Alan Podger says, figures Anthony a no-show tonight. I thought he was proud of his team. A little bit disappointed. I think that the guys are kind of phoning it in for the rest of the season, having some struggles. That's what they normally do. They're going to miss the rest of the season probably, as they're going to be disappointed and probably not sober for the rest of the shows that we're going to do throughout the season. But for Bills fans, we're sipping on our champagne. We're enjoying our beers, and we're drinking that mafia sauce all the way to the playoffs, as well as hopefully the Super Bowl. That's our goal here at the end of the day. Finally, let's turn it over to the New England Patriots, who continue to face a nightmare start. They are currently sitting at a record of 1-6, and this was another game where they traveled to London, absolutely struggled in this game. They were actually up in the game for a little bit to start the game, but then the Jacksonville Jaguars did a good job of coming back in the game. Watching that, I liked what I saw from the Jaguars, as even though they've struggled a lot this season, they actually finished out the game very well. Trevor Lawrence, 15 of 20 for 193 yards, 1 touchdown in the game. But look at Tank Bigsby, and being the number 2 running back for the Jacksonville Jaguars, finishing out the day with 26 carries for 118 yards, 2 touchdowns. And then rookie Brian Thomas Jr. coming into the game, having a big day, 5 catches for 89 yards and a touchdown. I know that many people that have drafted Brian Thomas Jr. in their fantasy leagues were disappointed in putting him on the bench, myself included. I left him on the bench this week, and I was totally surprised from what I saw in Brian Thomas Jr., and he's having a stellar season this year with the Jacksonville Jaguars. He is currently sitting at 30 receptions for 513 yards, 4 touchdowns on the season, and he is somebody that you're going to have to look at as a number 2 wide receiver in your fantasy lineups throughout the season, or even your flex option as well. But let's talk about the New England Patriots in this game, and this was a good start for the New England Patriots. They went down the field on both of their drives, scoring 10 points in the game. They looked like they had the momentum to start, and they ended up losing the momentum in the first quarter. Mikel Hesty scored a 16-yard touchdown pass from Drake May, to put the New England Patriots up 7-0, and then Joey Sly kicking a 41-yard field goal, making it 10-0. That's when the momentum started to shift, and you saw the Jacksonville Jaguars be able to put up 3 touchdowns to end the half, with Brian Thomas Jr. scoring a touchdown, as well as Tank Bigsby and Parker Washington putting the game at 22-10 at the end of the first half, with Brian Thomas Jr. scoring a 2-point conversion to make that a 22-10 game. And then in the third quarter, it turned into a little bit of a trade-off after the Cam Little 21-yard field goal. You saw that both teams score a touchdown in the game. KJ Osborne scored a 22-yard touchdown from Drake May. They failed the 2-point conversion on that and making it 25-16. And then Tank Bigsby scoring a 4-yard rushing touchdown with Cam Little making the kick, making the game a final score of 32-16. But let's talk about the yardage in the game. And let's start with the total yardage: 364 for the Jacksonville Jaguars, 295 for the New England Patriots. Yards per play, 6.2 for the Jacksonville Jaguars, 5.5 for the New England Patriots. And this is where things started to get a little bit interesting in the game, was the third down efficiency for the Jacksonville Jaguars. Although they have struggled over the past few weeks, they have done a better job in this game, going 6-10 in their third down efficiency. The New England Patriots going 6-12, so only 50% for them. Total first downs, this is an area that the New England Patriots want to improve on. 17 first downs, and it seemed like they were doing a better job of getting the ball down the field. But when they did get first downs, there was a penalty involved, and that's what drew them back further. In the game, they had 7 penalties for 35 yards, and it seemed like they came in crucial points of the game. The New England Patriots had 2 sacks allowed in the game, which is a little bit surprising because their offensive line has struggled at times. They did not have any sacks against or for the Jacksonville Jaguars, so they need to get to the quarterback a little bit more throughout the game. No turnovers for both teams, and the New England Patriots held the ball for just under 27 minutes of the game. Let's turn it over to the other side of the games, and let's talk about the Week 8 matchups that are going on this week. And I want to get to the comments real quick because I do see you guys coming into the chat. Beth B coming in saying there's nothing to be proud of if your team is the Jets. AOL Instant Messenger saying, when's Vaughn back? He will be back after the Seattle game. AOL Messenger coming in again to the chat saying, I told Jets fans they stink. As well as Alan Podger saying, you got that right, Beth. Appreciate you guys for tuning into the chat. Also, don't forget to click the like button and share this video with all your friends, and also keep the notifications open for Nickel City Mafia as well. Let's turn it over to Week 8. Let's talk about the Week 8 matchup. We will start with the divisional matchup that we will have here, the Jets and Patriots matchup, which is going to be a fun one. Both teams are, like I said, are struggling right now. The Aaron Rodgers-led New York Jets now have a new weapon in place at the number 1 wide receiver position in Davante Adams. While Davante Adams did not have a good game last week, he will have a little bit more experience with the team. Hopefully he can get a couple of catches in this game. And the New England Patriots come into this game, another loss for them. They are currently sitting at 1-6 in the division, and both teams need a spark in order to turn things around if they want to win the division. But let's talk about this game real quick. The opening line on the game is 41.5 points for the over-under. The Jets are favored in the game to win. The money line is set at minus 300. They are 7-point favorites to beat the New England Patriots in the opening line, which is going to be interesting to see. I do believe that the Jets are a train wreck team, and this is one of those games where it's a train wreck team that is going up against a team that just does not have an answer right now. And I feel like with everything that's going on, though, that the Jets are going to win this game just because they have the momentum, they have a better team, better roster that can make stops on defense. And that's what it comes down to. Pretty much what I see from the New England Patriots is a team that's in full rebuild mode. They have a lot that they need to do this offseason in order to get a better team with their offensive line. And that's where I think they're going to struggle, is their offensive line versus the Jets' defensive line. So we'll see what happens in the game there. But let's turn it over to the Miami Dolphins and their matchup that they will have this weekend going up against the Arizona Cardinals. Last week, the Cardinals ended up winning against the Chargers on Monday Night Football. That was the second Monday Night Football game that we saw. 17-15, Kyler Murray going 14 of 26 for 145 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception in the game. James Conner finished the day 19 carries for 101 yards, as well as being the leading receiver with 2 catches for 51 yards. That was one of the games that I actually did not watch because I felt like for the Monday Night Football games, it was the weaker of the two. I ended up watching the Baltimore Ravens and Buccaneers game, and that ended up turning out to be a little bit more of a blowout game, with the Bucs coming back to lose by 10 in a 41-31 game. Unfortunately, we did see some injuries in that game, but we do wish all the best for Chris Godwin and Mike Evans in this game. Let's go up to comments real quick. I see you, Beth B, coming into the chat saying, listen, Rodgers has been washed for the last 3 years. That's why Green Bay got rid of him and stuck with Love. Salah, I doubt, was the problem. Rodgers is he has lost the locker room, not Salah. Completely agree. Salah will move on and be fine. He built that defense to be top in the league after the mess left by Bowles. I completely agree with what you're saying here. Well, let's turn it over to the Miami Dolphins and let's talk about them and what they can do to get a win here against the Cardinals. This is going to be a game that I do believe that Tua Tagovailoa will play in, but we'll see what happens there. This will hopefully be a return of Tua. As I mentioned, some of the positivity that you can take out of this game. There wasn't a lot in the Indianapolis Colts matchup, but there's always the next game that you can look forward to. And I know the Arizona Cardinals are kind of one of those teams that's kind of a roller coaster. They have one good week, one bad week. They struggled against the Bills, but they beat some other good teams coming into play. And like I mentioned, this is going to be a game that will be interesting to see. And the Arizona Cardinals are coming to the Miami Dolphins, so we'll get to see what happens here. But at the end of the day, I believe if Tua is playing in this game, that the Miami Dolphins will get a win, and it'll be a fun matchup that we will get to see. Now let's turn it over to the Buffalo Bills and their matchup this week, going up against the Seattle Seahawks in Seattle this time. Another road game. This is the 4th road game in the last 5 games for the Buffalo Bills, having a game at home last week against the Tennessee Titans. This time they're going to travel way out to the Wild Wild West to take on the Seattle Seahawks and the 12th man in Seattle. This is going to be one of those tough games, but fortunately and unfortunately for the Seattle Seahawks, but good for the Buffalo Bills, DK Metcalf will probably not play in this game. Unfortunately, he does have a injury that he is dealing with that looks like it's going to be an MCL sprain, so he's going to be out more than likely this week. But for the Buffalo Bills, they remain pretty healthy. They did not have any significant injuries other than Terrell Bernard in this game. He left the game on multiple occasions, does have an ankle injury, so that's something that the Bills need to monitor throughout the week. But for the Buffalo Bills, this is going to be a difficult matchup because you do have a couple of other receivers on the Seattle Seahawks that are going to be tough matchups in Tyler Lockett as well as Jackson Smith-Njigba. And then you look at things in the run game as well. Kenneth Walker, if he is healthy, is one of the better running backs in the league, as well as Zach Charbonnet. He's another good running back for them, and Noah Fant. So this is going to be a tough matchup for this Buffalo Bills defense even though I do feel like they are going to win this game. It's a game where, I mean, the over-under on the game for the Buffalo Bills, the Bills are favored in this game with a spread of 2.5 to start the game. The over-under, I'm going to get those numbers to you in just a second. But like I said, this is going to be one of those games that I feel like the Bills are going to struggle in a little bit. But we'll see what happens here. And it's tough for a team that plays on the East Coast to travel to the West Coast is one of the things that I look at in this game as something that the Bills are going to need to work on. This game will be at 4:25 Eastern Standard Time, 1 o'clock Eastern Time. I'm sorry, it's a 4:05 game. I apologize. I did have that wrong on Fox and the Fox Sports app. The Bills' money line is set at minus 150. So the Seattle Seahawks are plus 125 in the underdog race, which means that if you put $10 in, you would get about $22.50 back. Over-under on the game is 47.5 points with Geno Smith and Josh Allen leading the way for both teams. I do feel like you should take the over on the game, but we'll see what happens in the game overall. This is going to be a tough matchup, like I mentioned, for the Buffalo Bills and all the other teams in the AFC East. You're going to see at least one team lose, maybe even 2 or 3 teams lose in this game. But we will definitely have something positive to talk about next week on the AFC East Summit for one of these teams between the Jets and the Patriots. So we'll see what happens in their matchup, and that'll be one of the focal points that we will talk about next week. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and follow us on all social media platforms. You can find us on YouTube, Instagram, as well as Facebook. And you can find myself, Brett McDurphy, on my channel, GoBillsPodcast.com. Click on over to the channel on YouTube as well as Facebook. You can let us know that you came over from Nickel City Mafia, where we appreciate each and every one of you guys for tuning in to our channel and letting us know that you came there. And just say hello that you're coming from Nickel City Mafia, and we will appreciate you guys as well. Click the notification bell to be notified anytime that we are going live on Nickel City Mafia, Go Bills Podcast, or even my buddy, Red, White, and Bills, and Sean Kula. Our next show that we will have as a channel will be on Saturday at 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. That show will be the Red, White, and Ruthless, as well as a show that you will definitely want to watch because we will be talking about the game preview of the Seattle Seahawks matchup. Beth B says that these slow starts will kill us against better teams. See Baltimore and Houston games. Absolutely agree with what you're saying. Let's start off strong. Let's have a good matchup this week for the Buffalo Bills against those Seattle Seahawks this week. But don't forget to like and subscribe and comment. As always, we say at the end of our shows, go Bills. And we will see you next week on the AFC Summit at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time. For all of the guys at the AFC Summit, my name is Brett McDurphy, and go Bills.